views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey folks, it's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists, writers, editors, photographers, filmmakers, really anybody, authors. Actually tonight we're going to talk to an author. Anybody who's putting stuff out in the Bronx, and the objective is to get you into their heads and find out what they're thinking about, what they're saying, what they're writing about, et cetera, et cetera. And this evening we're breaking new ground for us because we've never had Streetsblog NYC on our program, and Gersh Kuntzman is with us. Nice to have you with us, my friend.
It's great to be back in the borough of my birth, Gary.
Oh, really? You were born here, like everybody else.
Exactly.
And did you live here for a period of time?
I lived here on and off a couple of years, mostly.
Okay. Nothing to speak of.
Near Einstein, actually, just very close to your studios.
Ah, there you go. Well, it is nice to have you, and I'm not sure if it has ever happened before that any one of our guests has ridden their bicycle to here. Now, where did you ride from? And we're going to use that very cleverly as a segue to get into all the dialogue.
Well, I actually came up Morris Park Avenue, which is one of the more controversial bike lanes
first
in the
on
Bronx.
my list.
Oddly controversial, but I actually took the subway to about 180th, came over on Morris Park. It was great, beautiful day today, and obviously the big concern of people like me who are in the cycling community is we just want roads to be safe for all users. And as you add bike lanes, they actually do become safer for all users.
Let's talk about Streetsblog. How old is it? I mean, you know, people, and this was my thinking coming into this. It's a nuanced paper. In other words, that's all they do is, you know, transportation alternatives and all those kinds of things. So you say, well, it's a little part of the city. Let me tell you, nowadays, especially with the way traffic is, it is central to life in the Bronx and probably everywhere. Go ahead.
At Streetsblog, we do have a narrow lane, no pun intended. But it's not just about biking. Obviously, it's also about subways, buses, which is critical in the Bronx, getting people to their workplace, whether it's in Midtown Manhattan or in a different job center in the Bronx, Fordham Road, et cetera. You know, you talk about things like in Manhattan, they have the new 14th Street busway. That type of car-free transit that helps buses move along quickly is going to be the kind of wave of the future in the Bronx and Queens and Brooklyn. So those are the kind of core issues we cover. The bike lane stuff is actually secondary because, as you know, not that many people really, at the end of the day, commute via bike in New York City. Most people get around on the subway or the bus, and those are the principal ways in which we need to improve transit in the city. Well,
you know, I want to talk about Morris Park in general, but I'm going to tell you, because you asked me, and I said we're going to save it for the show. So if I have ridden my bike, and I used to commute when I used to work pretty close to the house, 2 or 3 miles. I used to ride my bike every day. But when I even go down to Manhattan, there's no place to put the car because they've shortened the streets or the parking options, and it becomes very difficult to maneuver. Now, there are some avenues, maybe 8th Avenue down below 34th Street or 9th Avenue further down, where it kind of works out okay. The avenues are wide, but I see so many places where traffic is backed up because they've taken lanes away. So I was asked before you came on the show, what do you think of bike lanes? And I like the idea. Nobody would be more for alternatives than I do, who sit in traffic all the time. But there's a certain reality here. I've laid it out. What do you think?
Well, you're coming from a windshield perspective, Gary, and that's fine. We experience that a lot. You're driving into Midtown Manhattan from the Bronx. First of all, that's probably a mistake on your part. There's no better place on the planet served by transit than Midtown Manhattan. So, but for putting that aside, if you have to drive, there are occasionally people who want to bring an elderly person to a doctor's appointment. We get that. We understand that.
Excuse me, or you go to a show or a late movie or
again,
something.
If you're going to a show in Times Square, the last thing you want to do is be in a car.
But
or on the sidewalk as a pedestrian, because there's no room for anybody.
But
the issue of this limited space on the roadways, in other words, you've got a 60-foot wide street. Now, currently, about 80% of that roadway is reserved for the movement and storage of vehicles. When I talk about storage, I mean people parking. So you've got the vast majority of that road is for cars already. Now, people say, oh, they put in a bike lane and that slowed everything down. No, actually what often happens is they'll take away some parking, to make room for alternative forms of transportation like pedestrians or a busway or bike lane. Now, if someone then double parks or illegally parks, yeah, that's when you start to have a problem because, like, for example,
Well, now you've made the street even smaller.
Right, but the design is typically, as long as everybody obeys the rules, in other words, people don't double park, that extra space they took away from cars is actually available.
And I do want to get specifically to Morris Park because, and in a way, this is a bridge to it. Are you then hurting businesses? In other words, if I'm in Manhattan and I want to run out and get a bagel or something, I know it's not legal to park, even a double park or zip into a bus stop for 60 seconds, grab the bagel and come out. And I'll give you a real example. Picked up my wife at the 242nd Street subway. Broadway, of course, was added bike lanes, which is a good spot for it because you got the park and people ride there. But there was no place for me to stop and pick her up. So either I'm going to back up traffic or I got to be miles away from the subway. Something's not working.
Well, the most important thing is when people are doing drop-offs at a transit center. We obviously want to encourage the city to create loading zones or drop-off zones because obviously there's no reason why you should block traffic that way, but also the city is trying to discourage you from driving. But if you're driving to a transit center or a ferry for a drop-off, that's a positive thing. Now, the most important thing, though, in terms of business community, when I was actually just on Morris Park Avenue, I actually was talking to some of the businesses.
On your way over here, by the way, for folks who don't know, this program is done at BronxNet Studios at Mercy College in the Hutch Metro Center.
Not easy to get to by bike, by the way, but nonetheless.
Not easy to get to by anything.
I did enjoy a slice of pizza at Emilio's on Morris Park Avenue.
Good choice.
The owner gave me a big earful about how the bike lane and the road diet has hurt his business. But if in actual discussion with him, it turns out it's not the redesign of the roadway that has hurt his business. What is hurting his business is what's hurting any business. It's taxes, it's property taxes, it's onerous rules that the de Blasio administration or any administration might put in. He also claimed
we hear that all the time.
Yeah, of course, you're going to hear it.
Owners.
He also claimed that the population of the neighborhood is going down when in fact it's going up. So my guess is he's complaining about a wide variety of things that have nothing to do with the bike lane or the road diet. As a matter of fact, statistics show that Morris Park Avenue is safer now for all users because drivers aren't able to speed as much.
There's been enough time to
well, it's preliminary statistics. Obviously, they only went in a couple of months ago,
Right.
but drivers are driving slower. They have to drive slower because the road has been narrowed a little bit, not just because of the bike lane, but because of the actual design of the road. So if you're driving slower, that means you're going to have fewer crashes. It's just a fact of urban life.
Of any life. Now, you, somewhere toward the beginning of this dialogue, you talked about how many bike riders are there. That came up extensively in the dialogue on Bronx Talk. I hosted a program on both. We brought transportation alternatives and the community board manager, and so that came up. The other question about that is how many bike riders are there? Right. And business owners are saying, wait a minute. I talked to one business owner who works at Morris Park Flooring. You can go visit him. He's a great guy. Jimmy, he's a great guy. And he said, if I get a delivery of carpets and it comes from a trailer truck, what now?
Well, again, we've encouraged the city to install loading zones so businesses can get their
I think
deliveries.
there is one somewhere on Morris Park.
And the other issue is, look, the flooring guy is not going to see a big uptick in his business because of a bike lane because people aren't biking to get flooring. However,
that's likely true.
I've talked to florists, for example. A flower shop owner in Queens says to me, oh, the bike lane's going to hurt my business. Well, in fact, I go to that florist and I go on my bike, and every time I go in there, I'd say, hey, another customer came in on his bike. The fact is, and the city Department of Finance has data on this. When a protected bike lane or a bike lane is put into a neighborhood, business doesn't suffer. In fact, you get different businesses and different customers. And that's the thing that a lot of business owners don't realize. They're getting business, it's just different people they're not used to seeing.
I'm going to switch hats now and say, if we're ever going to encourage alternative forms, there probably is some cost and there probably is some upsetness. Sure. And I personally, would certainly be for transportation alternatives. And so maybe we have to go through this in order to kind of convert. And frankly, I was in Manhattan, and it's as busy in the bike lane as it is in the street in this day. Maybe it'll come into the outer boroughs.
Well, the bottom line of the whole thing is cars produce a toxin that is toxic to human life.
Yeah,
we can't have that. That's not a long-term solution.
You were part of the writing of a story that said the NYPD, this is the headline of it, the NYPD targets blacks and Latinos for jaywalking tickets. That was somewhat extraordinary. One would think, if they don't give a lot of jaywalking tickets, and if they're inclined to give it, it's whoever does it. Right. But you found that there really is kind of a skein toward a certain person.
It was just a bizarre story because they only gave about 350 jaywalking tickets last year. The majority in the Bronx, by the way, which is weird.
Really?
Yeah, about 150 of the tickets were in the Bronx.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, most of the tickets were in the Bronx. Now, that in and of itself is not, it doesn't tell you anything, but of the 316 tickets, 90% of them went to blacks and Hispanics. Now, 90% of the tickets going to blacks and Hispanics is weird because you can't tell me that 90% of the people you see jaywalking are black and Hispanic. Everybody jaywalks. It's a birthright.
Everybody jaywalks.
It's a birthright in New York.
And so then you'd have to go back and look at what neighborhoods and you know. Listen, when we agreed to have you come on the program, I knew there were 1,000 issues, and unfortunately, we've done a few of them, and we'll do the other 997 the next time you come on.
Anytime you need.
Your legs are strong enough to bike back up here?
I'm going to bike to the Soundview Ferry. Want to see how that's like?
The Soundview Ferry, or you could take the subway and you get here. Gersh Kuntzman. Let's see now. I want to get the URL right.
I'll plug it. nyc.streetsblog.org.
That is. Listen, it's worth reading because it is central to our lives here in New York City right now. And maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but you got to know what's going on.
Exactly.
You're the man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Hey, we have a Bronx author coming up. Don't go away.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go long, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa, master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do-It-Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm actually really excited because I had heard about Georgia Woodbine. I had heard that she was kind of an inspirational speaker and motivator Who needs more motivation than me? Believe me. Georgia Woodbine, author, and let's see, I got a whole long list here. You've been on the Daily News and Huffington Post, on 103.9, on KISS FM, on Sirius Radio, and that's only the beginning. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just talk to me about your own background and how you got into this notion of trying to get people to do better in their lives.
Well, I always start off by telling people I don't teach what I don't know, and I don't lead where I don't go. So every book that I've ever written has really been formed by my own personal experiences, you know, the obstacles, the challenges that I faced, really trying to find my purpose and find my why. And so that's what really initiated the whole movement of, you know, how to create the life you love, how to find your passion, how to tap into your purpose, and all those other things.
Let's talk a little bit about that, and you can share whatever you'd like to share, because I'm not familiar. What are the kinds of obstacles that you face that you think people might relate to that have motivated you motivated you to motivate us?
Well, the thing is that there are two basic mindsets that basically shapes our lives. And it's the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And if you don't know which category you're in, it can hold you back in life. So a fixed mindset is someone that says, you know what, you know, all the things that I have, everything is carved in stone. Like my life is carved in stone. Wherever I am, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to end up. A growth mindset is you can cultivate things to work and effort. So I had to figure out which one of those mindsets that I had. And I realized, wow, I have a growth mindset. So I can change anything that I want to change at any given time in my life. And I think some of the things that most people, the obstacles they face is that, one, you know, you're used to people, let's talk about even college students or high school students. You're used to people telling you, this is what you should be doing with your life. This is where you should be spending your time. This is what, and so you never really find your own voice or your own place.
Somebody telling you.
Yeah, someone's always guiding you and directing you.
You should be doing this, or why aren't you in college? But there are issues. Listen, we talk about it all the time, the percentage of youngsters who are going to school out of shelters. I have great sympathy and empathy for young people in that situation. Very easy to say to them, do your homework, be square, do your thing, and go to college. There's issues.
Of course.
And a statement that was told to me by a different motivational speaker was, don't let your geography determine your biography. So that where you were and what you went through is not the finished product.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about your books. So now you've written a few of them. This was a previous one, which is How to Choose Your Career Path from 2009. And then this, total BS, but it's actually Body and Soul, ladies and gentlemen. So talk to me about the writing of them, and really, I mean, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. What is different in them? Do you change as an author? Do you find new ways to tell the stories, or are you really saying the same thing just in
there's one common denominator in all of my books, and I think it's really about becoming a better you. Whether it's finding a right career, whether it's being in the right relationship, whether it's getting fit and wellness, or even just, you know, finding out who you are and where you should be going in life and what the steps you should be taking. So every book that I've ever written was through my own personal experience. I just wish they had a book like How to Choose Your Career Path when I was in high school.
There you go. Let's start with that. So people in the Bronx, I mean, there's so many issues out there for so many people, especially young people, always concerned about that. And they say, well, goodness gracious, I don't know, I want to be a basketball player. I want to be a chef. I mean, but then the reality of that may not play. How do you choose a career that you want to do, and then ultimately get to a point where it becomes reality instead of just, I'm going to play in the NBA, or I'm going to, be a gymnast or whatever?
Well, one of the things that I teach as a life transformation coach is lifestyle transformation coach, I should say, is how to connect those dots, because I think that's the problem.
That is the question.
You know, how to connect the dots. So when I wrote How to Choose Your Career Path, I said to myself, okay, here's a book about me teaching others on how I was able to choose my career path. So what else can I do with this book? So then I created a curriculum. And so I started doing, selling my curriculums to school and teaching this in school. So it's really about how to find something and how to turn that passion into something profitable. But there are steps. You don't just go from A to Z.
Give me a sample. Give me a sample.
Okay, so
I love this idea because by step makes a lot of sense, frankly.
So I'll give you an example. So when I was teaching this book, How to Choose Your Career Path, this curriculum.
That's this, the one that I
in the high schools and colleges,
so
right.
10, 11 years.
So I was working with the students, and so we went through a lot of different things, developmental things like setting goals, you know, managing your time. You know, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that. And I break it down. There's 168 hours in a week. So how are you dissecting that time, and how are you losing time? So
time management.
Time management. That's a big, big piece. Time management, goal setting.
I want to go back to the time management, and I'm going to even use myself. So
okay.
I do a lot of different things. I host a couple of TV shows, I produce a website, and do all kinds of different things. And I find that if I take a step back and say, okay, now, because I'm making my own time, I work basically for myself,
right.
for the TV shows I do and for the other work that I do. And sometimes I say to myself, well, that last 45 minutes, maybe I was watching TV or I was playing a game on my computer or chatting with a friend or whatever it is, I say to myself, you know what? That probably wasn't the best use of time. And let me just add, if you need the time off, if you need the brain space, put that into your time. But when it's out of control, that's where you get in trouble, because I'm saying, gee whiz, I got to get out of here in 10 minutes and I just blew 45 minutes. If I did that in a schedule, I'd feel better, you know?
Right.
And I'm being very open and honest.
Yeah, you'd have more balance in your life.
Right.
And it's all.
And you'd be more successful.
Exactly. And it's always about balance. And as you were saying, taking that time out. One of the things I also teach is taking time out to meditate. A lot of times people don't even realize the power of meditation and how
Now, is this formal TM, or are you talking about just kind of giving yourself space?
I'm talking about just kind of giving yourself space, just taking that time out to self-reflect, self-evaluate, find out what it is that you want in your life, where you're trying to go, what action steps, because it's always about taking action. What action steps do I need to take to make A, B, C, D app happen? So if you don't take time to reflect and you think you know what you want, but you're not really clear on how to get there, how are you going to have the clarity to make the changes you need to make?
You know, one of the kind of philosophies that I think about, and it applies to a lot of different things, you want to be able to control it, not letting it control you.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, and Shakespeare wrote about Ophelia floating down the river, and you know, that kind of thing. And you can do that and find some way. But that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
How do you work with people? Do you work? You talked about speaking in schools.
And I'm a life coach.
And so you work with individuals.
I work one-on-one with individuals.
How does that work? Like, let's do a session. Let's help Gary. No, but I just
okay. So let's do like a mock session, right?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm
so all right.
enough.
So you would come to me and say, okay, Georgia, what is it that you need help? And you tell me what it is that you need help with. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is the time management, because I'm very busy I host 2 weekly TV shows and have a side business where I do some other things.
Okay, so the first thing I would ask you is, what's blocking you from getting to that next level? What is it that's blocking you?
Okay, and what if the answer is, and I'm not going to get into me personally, but what if because it is for many people, is financial. In order for me to expand my business or to do something different, I don't have enough capital to do that.
Okay, so that's
always. So then what I'm doing there is saying it's an external factor that I can't control.
Right. Let's go back to what I said earlier.
Go ahead.
The fixed mindset. So the fixed mindset says, because I don't have money and because I've never been exposed to certain things, I can't get to it, or I can't have it, or I can't get access to it. That's a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is, how can I connect with someone that maybe can help me? How can I network with other people in that field that can open doors for me? So there's always a way around everything. You might say, okay, I don't have the money, but that doesn't necessarily mean because you don't have the money, you can't get to that next level, because there's people around you that you just have to connect with that's on that same mindset.
I wonder how many people say to themselves, you know what, I got to get new friends, or like I'm hanging out with this group of people, and again, mostly talking about younger people
Right.
who find themselves in little groups with
Cliques,
schools and
cliques,
cliques and
yes,
schools, and
absolutely.
they didn't really create that; they just find themselves in
Right.
it. That's a tough thing to do, and again, thinking of young people, tough thing to do to break away, because then all of a sudden, oh, why is he or she so
Right.
special?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
But that's reality. You're going to surround yourself with
You
the right people.
have to surround yourself with the right people. That's a big part of success. And so I always tell, even with kids, I say, listen, if you are the smartest person in your circle, you have to change your circle, because what's happening is that if you're the smartest person in your circle, people are coming to you. You're constantly giving.
But you haven't succeeded.
Exactly. How are you gaining more if you're still surrounded by that same circle of people? My mom used to always tell me, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And it's
Very
such
good.
a true saying.
Who are the people who should say to themselves, gee, I want to, GeorgiaWoodbine.com, and it just WOODBINE, so it's GeorgiaWoodbine.com, who should look at the website and say, hey, maybe this is somebody I want to work with. Well, give me a profile of the kind of person who you work well with and you can really help.
So a lot of people that come to me are authors, writers, retirees.
Really, I was making the assumption about young people.
Entrepreneurs.
Fascinating.
Yeah, all, high school students, college students. Like, I work with the schools with the curriculum for this, but I do work with people in different industries that are really just trying to figure out even career transition. That's a big one.
We're almost out of time. Can you give me a sample of, you don't have to say who it is, but somebody who came to you and then with an issue and how you helped them navigate to a better place?
So someone came to me, and I'll give you an example.
Somebody right in mind.
No, because I worked with a lot of people. So this woman came to me, and she's in the educational system. She says, I wanted to write a book, and she goes, I don't know how to go about it. What are the steps? So I actually coached her, and she actually finally completed that book that she was writing for 30 years that she never got to finish, which was the certain things that I showed her. These are the steps that you need to take to actually make this happen.
You must have
I
loved
was
it.
so proud. I was so proud.
Not only of yourself, but really of her.
No, I was so proud that she got to the level where she needed to get to.
Wonderful.
And that's my passion. My passion is to help others succeed.
And that's a perfect way for us to say, hey, check out GeorgiaWoodbine.com. One book is How to Choose a Career Path.
Right.
The other is Total BS, but
BS.
it's body and soul. That's part of it.
Yes, and I have a free gift for all of your viewers.
Oh.
If they go to my website, www.georgiawoodbine.com, I will give them for free a guide, 5 secrets to create the life you love.
Beautiful. Georgia, so nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm all motivated. I'm ready to go. So that will do it for this evening's Bronx Buzz. Next week we'll be back, and also Monday night on Bronx Talk, we'll be talking about the Middle East, a whole other thing with one of the foremost Middle East experts on our program. That'll be Monday night at 9 o'clock here on BronxNet Television. Good night.